In my last video I uploaded, I did a college football March Madness style 64 team bracket for 2024. I picked every game. We got to the Final Four with Texas, Oregon, Tennessee, Georgia, and Georgia won the whole thing. But something about the bracket felt hollow. So I am determining this bracket obsolete, and we're moving forward to bigger and better things, because who wants to sit here and watch me just pick every game? So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to simulate a bracket from 2023 using NCAA Game Sim. It's an online simulator. You see, you punch in a score. Here's a random matchup between Akron and Air Force. Air Force beating Akron 31-13. In this one, we're going to be simulating it using FBS and FCS schools, giving an auto bid to each conference. As you can see with the auto bids, a team from every single conference across the FBS and FCS levels. If there's an asterisk next to their name, it means they needed the auto bid in order to make the tournament and wouldn't have otherwise gotten an at-large spot. You see Liberty and Miami of Ohio, the two FBS conference champs that needed it, and South Dakota State, the only FCS team that would have had an at-large bid had they not won the Missouri Valley Conference. And so that leaves us with those teams in at the auto bids. Now, in order to determine the seeding, we went ahead and used ESPN's FPI, factoring in the S&P Plus as well from 2023 to seed the FCS schools fairly. And so doing that criteria, let's look at the bubble, the last four in. Memphis, the Tigers just getting in, giving Ryan Silverfield and his team a chance to compete in this tournament. Georgia Tech, one of the last four in. The Yellow Jackets just getting that spot. Iowa with Brian Ferentz's offense, kind of dangerously close to missing the tournament despite winning 10 games. The FPI just really does not like Iowa. And then Virginia Tech is the last team in off the bubble. And so that gets us to the teams that just missed out. First four out, Rutgers. Poor Rutgers football was so close. North Dakota State, surprisingly, an FCS team that almost got an at-large bid, but they just couldn't, so no FCS teams with at-large bids. Cal and Wazoo both missing. And then you see the next four out, a group of five teams that had strong seasons, and then an Arkansas team that probably didn't deserve to be in. So we'll take a quick peek at each of the regions. You have the Midwest region, headlined by Michigan as the 1 seed. You've got some interesting sleepers in here, like maybe Yale is a team to look out for, Boise State, which takes us to the next region, which is going to be the South region, the Georgia Bulldogs region. I think definitely some interesting teams here. Maybe Furman, a little sleeper at the 15 seed. Memphis getting that 13 seed as one of the last teams in the tournament. There is the East region led by Ohio State and Alabama. A couple big brands, though, in Clemson, North Carolina. You even got Maryland at that 7 seed. Liberty at the 13 seed is an interesting one as well. That is the East region, and that leaves us with the West region. Oregon Ducks headlining this region as the 1 seed, and some interesting matchups like that James Madison, Arizona one, that Oregon State-Troy matchup. Washington against a Montana team that beat them a couple seasons ago, and South Dakota State as a 10 seed. And so those are the regions. Let's go ahead and kick things off in this 64-team bracket through the simulation in the Midwest region. And we look at the results from the first round, and oh my goodness, it's one of the things that makes simulating this just so much more fun, that there's unhinged results that you could never anticipate. Drake beats Michigan in triple overtime, 33-29. It's the biggest upset in college football history, topping Michigan versus Appalachian State, and that's just the start. Iowa State trounces Kentucky, the Wildcats, and Mark Stoops bounced very early. Boise State's upset bid versus A&M comes up just short. And how about that? Georgia Tech, one of the last four in as an at-large bid, they get a victory over Tennessee, a huge upset there. Miami, Florida, beating Wisconsin 35-27, a nice high-scoring battle there. Oklahoma surviving against Yale, what would have been another crazy upset. Oklahoma State beating Utah in a battle between teams that I'd say are for the most part underrated. And then Notre Dame winning a surprisingly close game against Austin Peay, 31-10, which sets up our second round. We've got some Cinderellas still alive here. 16-seeded Drake, 13-seeded Georgia Tech, 10-seeded Oklahoma State, all still alive in the Midwest bracket. But let's get right to these second round games. Drake continues their Cinderella run. 17-6 victory over Iowa State. They own the state of Iowa. Georgia Tech and Haynes King getting the revenge victory over Texas A&M, 49-21. It's a bloodbath. Jimbo Fisher presumably still the coach in this scenario because it's 2023. Oklahoma with the victory over Miami, Florida, 20-13. A pretty low-scoring battle, but Brent Venables' squad is in the Sweet 16. And then Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman beating Oklahoma State to set up a Sweet 16 that features 2 double-digit seeds and then chalk on the bottom half with the 3 and 2 seed. So setting up the Elite Eight, let's look at the next batch of games. Oh, Georgia Tech ends Drake's Cinderella run 16-3. They stymie the Drake offense. And then Notre Dame defeats Oklahoma 34-24, setting up the championship game in this region. Georgia Tech versus Notre Dame, the Cinderella story versus a squad that's looking to take advantage of the fact that the 1 seed Michigan is no longer in it. And Georgia Tech has broken the simulator. They beat Notre Dame 34-17 to punch their ticket into the Final Four, capping off what was a chaotic Midwest bracket. Take a look at it in all its glory. Some surprising results to say the least, and the Yellow Jackets go dancing into the Final Four. Let's head on over to the South region, where the Georgia Bulldogs, who are probably a lot of people's pick to win the title, are the 1 seed. Let's get into it with no further delay. Georgia wins their game versus Duquesne, I can't pronounce their name honestly, but they win in advance, avoiding another 16 seed upset over a 1 seed. Auburn crushes UCF. USC overcomes a stingy defensive performance by Iowa, wins 23-7. And how about Memphis? Another one of those last 4 in, getting a victory over Ole Miss. Louisville beats the 11-seeded Florida. LSU takes care of business versus Florida A&M. TCU and West Virginia play in a classic by the looks of it, with TCU just getting the victory. And another absurd upset. The Furman Paladins shock Texas 31-20. And just like that, another team has been upset, leaving us with the second round here in the South. A couple Cinderella stories in Memphis and Furman to keep an eye on. Let's get to the next batch of games. Georgia defeats Auburn 40-33, holding off their rivals. Memphis' Cinderella story is over against USC, and TCU escapes in overtime to beat Furman, advance to the Sweet 16, and we're going to have an all-purple side of the bracket with LSU taking care of business versus Louisville, setting up this Sweet 16 with the 1 seed Georgia, 5 seed USC, 3 seed LSU, and 7 seeded TCU. Let's get to the Sweet 16 results. Georgia beats USC narrowly, 21-24. And oh my goodness, 80 points by the LSU offense, punching their ticket to the Elite Eight. So the Elite Eight, Georgia, LSU, it's an all-SEC battle. Will we have 2 teams from the state of Georgia in the Final Four? We will not. LSU upsets Georgia 48-45. Jaden Daniels and company are not messing around, and they are the second team in the Final Four. We are on to the third of 4 regions. Ohio State headlining the East region, but there's some talented teams here. You've got Missouri, Clemson, Kansas State, Alabama, all hungry to advance. Let's get to the first round results. Ohio State takes care of business versus Nicholls State. North Carolina, another bloodbath in the 8-9 matchup. Clemson just takes care of business versus a red-hot Virginia Tech team to end the season last year. Missouri survives in overtime versus Liberty. South Carolina gets the upset over SMU. Even though SMU was the Group of 5 team, it's still technically an upset. They were the 11 seed. Albany almost pulls the upset versus Kansas State, but the Wildcats just avoid their upset bid. Maryland with the win over NC State without issue, and Alabama, a little bit of a sloppy performance, but they take out Lafayette to get through to the second round. So looking at how the bracket looks, it's mostly chalk. The one upset, not even that much of an upset. Let's get to the second round results. Ohio State takes care of business, beats North Carolina. Clemson shuts out Missouri, a statement win for the Tigers as they cruise to the Sweet 16. Kansas State takes care of business as well, beating South Carolina, the 11 seed, to advance, and Alabama just avoids an upset loss to Mike Locksley's Maryland squad, setting up this Sweet 16 with Ohio State, Clemson, Kansas State, and Alabama. No major surprises here. The Clemson win over Missouri may be a minor one. Let's look at the results. Clemson pulls the upset. Dabo Swinney continues to own Ohio State. They beat the Buckeyes 27-20, and Alabama beats Kansas State down. And so now we have an Elite Eight matchup between Clemson and Alabama. It's a classic rematch of what several national titles were. And the Tide roll. Alabama wins a low-scoring battle as they did throughout this region and win the East region. The Crimson Tide are the third team in the Final Four. Last and certainly not least, it is time for the West bracket. The Oregon Ducks surprisingly getting the 1 seed from the FPI seeding. Teams like Florida State and Washington and Penn State also in here. This is a stacked region. Let's take a look at the results from the first round. The Ducks beat the Howard Bison pretty handily. Texas Tech, a low-scoring victory over Duke, but they advanced, setting up the rematch from the regular season versus the Ducks. Arizona beats James Madison. Florida State blows the doors off Miami of Ohio. The one MAC team in the bracket is gone. Oregon State beats down Troy 41-13 for an impressive victory. And Montana upsets the Washington Huskies just like they did in 2021. It is deja vu for the Huskies. That is a tough pill to swallow. And then it's another FCS over FBS upset. South Dakota State taking out the Kansas Jayhawks 35-10. 2 FCS wins in one bracket, although some may say South Dakota State would have been favored in that game. And then the final game, Penn State avoids the upset, takes care of business, and downs Gardner-Webb. So the second round, full of interesting storylines here. And we look at the results. Oregon absolutely blasts the doors off Texas Tech 55-6. The Red Raiders will not get revenge. And Arizona, one of the most red-hot teams to end the season, beats Florida State on a last-second field goal to win 38-35. The Beavs take care of business versus the inferior Montana Grizzlies. They do what Washington couldn't with a 44-10 victory. And South Dakota State continues to march, this time a 17-13 victory over Penn State. Many people regard the Jackrabbits as the best FCS team of all time, and they beat Penn State. What a victory. That sets up this Sweet 16 with a 6 seed, a 10 seed, and a 5 seed. Let's look at the results. Arizona upsets the Oregon Ducks. They didn't play during the regular season, but the Cats get their victory here, 35-24. And then the Jackrabbits continue to march, a 58-13 win over Oregon State. The Beavers absolutely out. South Dakota State advances. It is Arizona. It's South Dakota State. Will we see an FCS team in the Final Four? And we will not. Arizona wins 38-24. Jackrabbits Cinderella run is over. The Cats are the 4th and final team in the Final Four. This is the Final Four. Georgia Tech, Arizona, Alabama, LSU. It's one of the things that makes using a simulator so much more exciting because I never would have been crazy enough to pick these teams to be the final ones. No 1 seeds left, a 13 seed, a 5 seed. It's so exciting. Let's get into the results from the Final Four matchups. It's Georgia Tech. They win again. They beat Arizona 38-24. They are in the national championship game, and Jaden Daniels and LSU upset Alabama, setting up the national title matchup between the Yellow Jackets and the LSU Tigers. Who will be the one that wins this 64-team bracket? It is LSU, a dominant 44-16 victory, and the Tigers are crowned national champions to end it all. What happened to make LSU win it all, and what happened to get Georgia Tech into the national championship? What a fun bracket this was to simulate. I hope you guys had a fun time as well. I apologize to all the Georgia Tech fans out there who I just gave more heartbreak than you thought you were going to get today. But let me know down in the comments what result in this bracket shocked you the most, and let me know what you thought was the most unrealistic thing that happened in this bracket. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As usual, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. We're going to continue to pump out bracket content this week, especially after Selection Sunday when the college basketball bracket drops. Typically, we cover college football stuff here, but March is a special month, and it's college basketball who owns this month. So we'll do some stuff. We'll have our own tournament challenge. I'll post the link eventually for you guys to join. But that's all I got for you guys, and I will see you guys later.